Hello and welcome back to the channel Mind Giants, the channel where the greatest minds of the future come to get inspired and learn. This is the first video of what we intend to be our main series, the series Mind Giants. We'll basically talk about the history, main works, and ideas of the greatest minds of all time. The first episode will be focused on the most important philosopher of the modern era and the profile picture of the channel, Immanuel Kant. Introduction and early life. Immanuel Kant was born in April 22nd of 1724 in Königsberg, a city now known as Kaliningrad, which made him German and Russian at the same time. Kant was a polymath, regarded often as a philosopher. He also made contributions to areas like astronomy, anthropology, and physics. He advanced geology and psychology. Kant is often considered one of the weirdest philosophers of all time, not because his life was crazy and unusual, but because his life was way too average. He was born and died in the same city, without even traveling far. He never got out of the country. His neighbors used to set their clock based on Kant, because he was never late. Even though he lived a strict life, his life was pretty calm. He would wake up every day at 5 a.m., then he would proceed to drink tea and smoke. After this, he would prepare to his lectures and work on his book until 7 a.m. At 7, he started his lectures, only finishing at 11 a.m. After working, he used to go lunch in a pub or restaurant with friends from different backgrounds. Sometimes, he would spend so much time there that he would only finish his lunch at 3 p.m. After lunch, he goes on a walk and talk to his friends. Most times, he would talk to Joseph Grimm, his best friend. On the weekends, he returned home at 7 p.m. After some work and some more reading, he would go to bed precisely at 10 p.m. every night. A lot of habits, passions, and works of Immanuel were inspired by his parents, both of them being devoted followers of Pietist Lutheranism, a branch of Lutheranism that focused on inner life, simplicity, and obedience of moral law. The parents' faith led Kant to study. The pastor directed him to Pietist school, becoming the eldest child to get education in the family. He acquired his love for Latin classics at this period. He studied there from 8 to 16 years old. He enrolled in the University of Königsberg for theology in the year of 1740. Even though he studied theology, he was more attracted to mathematics and natural science. He was a big fan of Sir Isaac Newton, his contemporary, often considered one of the greatest mathematicians and physicists of all time. Check out if we haven't already released a video. He wanted to pursue an academic career. However, the death of his father in 1746 and his failure to obtain the post of under tutor in one of the schools made him seek for a way of making a living outside of academia. In that situation, the philosopher became a familiar tutor, working as a tutor for 9 years in 3 different families. This period was really important because in this period he got to know the local elites and got social status. Because of the status, he got to travel to Arsendorf, the furthest he ever traveled. His network also led him to have a friend who helped him and led him to be able to finally complete his degree in university in 1755. Career start. At this period, he started lectures and also started presenting his thoughts on theories to the world. His first work was called A Brief Outline of Some Meditations on Fire. In that book, he argued that bodies operate on one another through a medium of uniformly diffused elastic and subtle matter that is the underlying substance of both heat and light. His first book was called Universal Natural History of the Theory of the Heavens, a book of physics and astronomy, where he talked about the formation of the sun and solar system, creating the nebula hypothesis, and deduced that Milky Way was a large disk of stars. Laplace independently came to a similar conclusion on nebulas. This is why it's called Kant-Laplace hypothesis. Some even claim that he made geological advances in that book. While lecturing, Kant started slowly decreasing his interest in the natural science, like astronomy and physics, and started to be more connected with philosophy, where he made the most advances. For his lecture years, he was very successful, and everybody enjoyed his lecture style, which, differently from his markedly book style, was humorous and vivid, and lived by many examples. His success brought him many different opportunities in many different cities. However, he preferred the peace and quiet of his native city in which to develop and mature his own philosophy. In his early years, he criticized a lot of Leibniz's ideas. Leibniz died just 1 decade prior to Immanuel's birth, and his main idea was the belief that philosophy should model itself to mathematical principles. Kant argued that mathematics proceeds from definitions that are arbitrary, by means of operating that are clearly and sharply defined, upon concepts that can be exhibited in concrete form. In contrast with this method, he argued that philosophy must begin with concepts that are already given, thought confusely of insufficiently determined, so that philosophers cannot begin with definitions without thereby shutting themselves up within a circle of words. Philosophy cannot, like mathematics, proceed synthetically. It must analyze and clarify. He proceeded to talk about the human mind and spirit in later books. He started to sound more like himself after he had encountered with the philosophy of David Hume that opened his mind to more skeptical ideas and the British empiricism. Actually, Kant is often considered the man that defined the middle ground between empiricism and rationalism, the two major thought schools at the time. Rationalism is the knowledge that is derived from reason and logic, while on the other hand, empiricism is the knowledge that is derived from experience and experimentation. Critique era. In 1770, he was appointed to the chair of logic and metaphysics, giving birth to his new era. Sometimes called the Critique era or his mature era, is often regarded as his prime. After some time, he started to get more isolated, but not completely. His isolation ended in 1781 with his most important and groundbreaking work that gave birth, bringing not only a new period in his career, but also a new period in philosophy. He released Critique of Pure Reason, the middle ground between British empiricism and rationalism. In his proposal, he said that knowledge can be a priori and a posteriori. The idea is that there are things that came before the knowledge and the individual, and those things are a priori, agreeing with rationalists. However, there are also a posteriori knowledge, the knowledge and experience that came after birth, by the senses, agreeing with empiricism. Most of his contemporaries and readers did not like this book. They thought it was too long yet incomplete and dull, besides critics of the content itself. In 1788, he released his second critique, the Critique of Practical Reason. Here, Kant focused on the practical use and aspects of the reason, creating a shorter but still unique and innovative book. The main idea of the book is that with reason you can act in an ethical and moral way. This way, Kant's ethics are organized around the notion of a categorical imperative, which is a universal ethical principle stating that one should always respect the humanity of others, and that one should only act in accordance with rules that could hold for everyone. He also talked about hypothetical imperatives, which are valid only in the presence of some interior desire or goal. The last but not least of Immanuel Kant's critique era books is the 1790 Critique of Judgment. This critique is divided in two parts, the aesthetical judgment and teleological judgment. In the first of these, he analyzed the notion of aesthetic purposiveness. Kant ascribed beauty to something, such as the judgment according to him. Unlike a mere expression of taste, they claim the explanation lies in the fact that when a person contemplates an object and finds it beautiful, then there is a certain harmony between the imagination and his understanding of which he is aware from the immediate delight and rejects the object. Before continuing, it is important to define teleology. Teleology is the explanation of phenomena in terms of the purpose that serve rather than the cause by which they arise. This part is better described by Britannica. Quote, in the second part, Kant turned to consider teleology in nature as it's posed by the existence in organic bodies of things of which their parts are reciprocally means and end to each other. In dealing with these bodies, one cannot be content with merely mechanical principles. Yet, if mechanics is abundant and the notion of purpose and is taken literally, this seems to imply that things to which it applies must be work of some supernatural design. But this would mean a passing from the sensible to the supersensible, a step proven by the first critique to be impossible. Kant answered this objection by admitting that teleological language cannot be avoided in taking account of natural phenomena, but it must be understood as meaning only that organisms must be thought of as if they were the product of design, and this is by no means the same as saying that they are deliberately produced. Last years. Kant's peak came later in his life, but his success came even later. Not long after his critiques were released, he was already being taught in every major German-speaking university. Kant became a kind of oracle during his last decades of his life. For 1790, Kant's health began to decline seriously. He still had many literary projects, but he found it impossible to write more than a few hours a day. The writings that he tended completely consist partially of elaboration of a subject not previously treated in any detail. Partly it replies to criticism and to the clarification of misunderstanding. In 1793, he released his book, Religion Within the Limits of Reason Alone, and it got him in trouble with the current Persian, so for some years he did not write about the religion. He brought his zeal in 1798, when he wrote The Conflict of the Faculties. In those 5 years he talked mostly about politics. In 1795, he he wrote Project for a Perpetual Peace. In 1797, Kant wrote three incredible books: Metaphysics of Morals, The Philosophy of Law, and The Doctrine of Virtue. The first one said that moral principles must be based on concepts of reason as opposed to particularities of a culture or personality. The second one talks about the philosophical points on the law. We call it jurisprudence now. The third one, Kant sets forth a system of duties to oneself and to others in which he appeared to relieve them from the formation of the society, thus illustrating the great and various consequences that follow from the moral law. In 1798, the conflict of faculties. In 1800, he released one of his last books, called Logic. There he insists that formal logic should abstract from all content of knowledge and deal only with our faculties of understanding, intellect, verstand, and normal forms of thought. Accordingly, Kant considered logic to be short and very general, but, on the other hand, apodictically certain. Only 1 year after his death, he released his significant and incredible book. Kant wrote Philosophy of Education. In this book, Kant sees a person as an existence who needs education. Kant defended that between existence, only a person needs education to develop gradually from perfection, and that one person separately from animated and lifeless existence is a different way. Here he said one of his most iconic phrases: a human being is always a result of education. After a gradual decline that was painful for his friend, as well as to himself, Kant died in Königsberg on February 12, 1804. His last words were, "Eist ist gut. It is good." His tomb in the cathedral was inscribed with the word in German, "The starry heavens above me and the moral law within me," the two things that he declared in the conclusion of Second Critique. Fill the mind with ever new and increasing admiration and awe, and nothing and more stillingly reflect on them. So this is it for today, the life and work of Immanuel Kant. The channel is a project from two students that want to see a better world, a world that is more educated and more happy. The future is bright, humanity is incredible. The past will inspire and guide us to a more conscious future, where people will be smarter, healthier, and happier. So stay tuned, because we release incredible videos 3 times per week, Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturdays, at 6 p.m. New York time. Hope you stay well, and have a great day.